Hey everyone, thank you for joining us tonight on our Wednesday night 8 p.m. live PROCAST with Area Scouts. These lives feature our advisors, directors, and special guests that we have coming on the show every Wednesday night. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us tonight on our Wednesday night 8 p.m. live PROCAST. I always do that. We have a special guest tonight is Mike Medici, our Director of Scouting for the Area Scouts platform. As usual, we have our Director of Baseball Operations, Brian Murray, and our Director of Sports Medicine and Performance, Dr. Anthony Enzillo, on the call tonight as well. We're going to start off right now with Brian Murray is going to do our normal interview with our special guest, and then we will proceed into kind of doing the walkthrough through the platform and going through exactly what the parents and athletes see when they go through the Area Scouts program. So without further ado, Brian Murray and Mike Medici.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Good to see you again. So run through a couple questions here with you and get to know you a little bit. Have the audience get to know you a little and, talk about scouting and talk about a bunch of things going on right now. So first of all, why don't you tell us about Scout School 360 and why you started it?
So it was something I was kind of toying around in my mind for a long time. You're on LinkedIn and LinkedIn's really, it's a networking site. So, people see what I do. They see, Scout, and they would just ask, say, hey, what do I got to do to get in? Or tell me, can you give me some information? Like, what do you look for in athletes? Because when you really look at it, go Google it. There's not a lot of information out there. And it just kept getting over and over. And it's totally fine. Like, I'm cool with answering everybody, paying it forward, providing information. But it just got me thinking, like, why don't I just put something together where everybody can take advantage of it? And it probably really springboarded when Lance reached out to me and he's basically said, like, hey, what do you think about making, some kind of training that we can integrate in Area Scouts? And I'm like, all right, it's a perfect opportunity. And that it went from, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this to, all right, let's get this done.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I actually went through the program myself. So I'll tell you, it definitely gave me a lot more to look at when I'm evaluating players. It helped me as a coach too, I think, just by being able to see some things that maybe I didn't recognize before, which is very helpful, even if you're not looking for a career in scouting, but you just want to get better at evaluating your players, tryouts, things like that. Really being able to see potential, being able to see mechanics and a lot of different things that you look for. That's, in your program, you really go over in detail and how to do that. So yeah. I thought it was fantastic.
No, I appreciate it, man. I mean, it's really like just changing how you look at the game. Don't look at it as a fan. Look through it from a totally different lens. So as you're watching, you're processing it differently, and I mean, one of my sons is 8 years old and I'll go watch him play and you just like, it's just natural. I'm like, all right, that kid's, he's 8, but I can see like there's some twitch or he's really athletic or he moves really well in the box or, the arm really plays. And it's just like, yeah, it's 8, but that's how you become wired that way. So yeah, you just completely look at the game totally different. And I think that's what I encourage. Like even watching a game on TV, like don't look at it as a fan. Take a step back, really try to like break it down. Try to slow the game down and evaluate whether it's a swing, the pitch, the delivery, just what you're seeing play out on TV or in a ballpark.
Yeah. No, I think all great tools for baseball people, whether you're a coach or aspiring to do more than that. Be a scout or go out there and evaluate players. So you've been a MLB scout now for over a decade. What was your path that you took out of college that led you to scouting professionally?
It wasn't by design. Honestly, it was, I played as long as I could. I got an opportunity to coach. It's probably still similar today as it was 12 years ago, is in order to make any kind of true living in baseball at the collegiate level, I mean, you got to be at some of the bigger schools, mid-majors on up. And I was a top assistant. And it was great. It was a great learning opportunity, but it wasn't really, is a full-time, but didn't really show up on the paycheck. And, I kind of I was doing it, trying to kind of make my way and hopefully get another coaching job, but would pay a little bit more and consider, a full-time position. And this opportunity came along with the Blue Jays at the time. And it was like, you can't really pass this up. It wasn't something I was looking for, but I kind of look back like, all right, if I go into scouting, let's say it's just not for me. Like, I just want to be on the field. I'm going to meet so many coaches. I'm going to build this huge network because now I'm overseeing, at that time it was 2 states, a ton of different people, come across a lot of people in the game. And, hopefully that will allow me to get back in, fast forward 12 years later, I'm still here, so it really wasn't by design. It was kind of a combination of, maybe a little luck, some timing, but it was an opportunity I couldn't really pass up at that time. And I've truly enjoyed it ever since.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know how you could pass that up. I mean, I would love to have that opportunity too, just working with the big league clubs and getting out there and looking at the kids and evaluating. That's great. So, there's been a lot of changes in the past, 10, 15 years. And really, how do you feel the use of advanced metrics in baseball now has changed the world of scouting?
There's a lot of information available. Like, there's so many different gadgets that are being used, different platforms to track information. There's just almost like to the point where it's too much. I think when we look at some stuff, we got to kind of pull back the curtain. Like, all right, what's applicable? I think on the scouting side, there's really 2 different ways to look at it. You have your scouting side and you have the development. On the scouting side, I think what it can provide is validates what you're seeing with your eyes. For us, the Rapsodo, the TrackMan, yes, you can get even more in depth, like diamond kinetic sensors off the bat. I know they have the ball, blast. It will give you some information, but scouting, it used to be really just like the evaluation. That was it. Now the puzzle's gotten bigger. So on the scouting side, it's all the data, the statistics, your evaluation, the makeup. It's all part of a piece of that puzzle. When you look at the player development side, I think what it can do is create a baseline where you evaluate somebody and say, hey, this is where you're at. All right, here's what you need to do to improve upon that. And here's are some, whether it's exercises, some things you can do, and then, hey, we can retest later. I think it's great on the development side because it's truly like, hey, I used to always use video when I was coaching, because I call it like the truth. Like, don't tell me you're not doing that. Look at the video. Here you go. Here it is. And that's in a lot of cases, whether it's, the blast motion, it's the KVS data. I mean, there's so many different things out there. It's showing you like this is it. This is where you're at. If you want to raise your game, you're going to have to get to here. Here are some things you can do to improve upon that. So yeah, there's a ton of information. And I think it's great. It's just, you can't take it all in. You got to kind of pick your spots. Like what's going to be applicable to what I'm trying to do. Really it's understanding it. I think, especially on the development side, like, all right, here's your data. All right, how can we improve your ability based on what this data is telling us? I think that's a big part.
Yeah. And then it's funny that you said it can be used for a development tool, because I feel like that's what Area Scouts does well is, we get the metrics, but then we retest and we working on fundamentals, working on mechanics, working on agility, strength, everything that comes with an athlete, right? To get them to the point where their metrics get elevated from all the good work they're doing. So I totally agree with that. And funny that you mentioned video. I do a lot of, private pitching lessons, group pitching lessons. And the first thing I do is take video of an athlete in their delivery and showing them, through graphics on their video where they are from an angle, their back knee, whether it's straight or it's bending over their toe, or, getting into different, mechanics that could help them with their power, right? With locating their fastball. And then when we talk about the advanced metrics, there is that you still need to see the person play, right? I mean, great. You got a 94, 95 mile an hour fastball, but what if you can't hit the zone with it, right? So, or do you have swing and miss stuff, or are you flat, right? all those things come into play. So yeah, great tool. I just hope it doesn't try to take over as be the only kind of tool, you know?
I think you just said it perfect there. All right, you throw 96. Is it in the zone? Is there quality to it? Is it effective? Is it effective in the zone? Is it effective out of the zone? I mean, there's all sorts of, I mean, everybody throws hard these days. It's just crazy. But you know, there's every year you see somebody hanging around AAA throwing 100, and you look at where they've been, and they've been there for, 8 years, and might have got a cup of coffee, but they're always back in AAA. It's because, you know what, as much as it's great to throw 100. If it doesn't play, it doesn't play. Guys see it out of your hand. It's true through the zone. It gets barreled, doesn't miss bats. And then you look at other guys, like Kyle Hendricks, who's going to be 87, 89 and manipulate the ball in all sorts of ways, and incredibly effective. So there, like you said, there's so much goes in, you got to see it. Because if you just look on paper, Kyle Hendricks, you're looking at 87, 89, that's not going to work. Well, it's working in the big leagues right now. And you're seeing guys that are 96 and 98 and they're getting tattooed. And you're just, but on paper, it looks great. But when you see it, it's like, the hitters don't really believe it's 96 to 98. They're hitting it like it's 91, 92.
Right.
So it always goes back. You got to see it with your eyes.
And a little off script here, but what do you attribute to all the 95, 96, 97 mile an hour fastballs nowadays compared to even 10 years ago? It wasn't like that. So what do you attribute to that?
Man, I mean, when I started, if you hit 90, that was something.
Right.
Now, hey, I got 5 guys throwing 90. Like, okay, what else they got? Hopefully, a really good breaking ball. I think a lot of it's the evolution of just all this data. You have all these different kind of satellite places, like your drive line, your thread, and we have P3 in St. Louis. There's another one in Lexington. I'm out of the Midwest. That are really specializing in this stuff. And, I think these kids are getting involved with some of these programs a lot sooner, so you're specializing in pitching earlier. I'm not a huge weighted ball guy, but a lot, when you start going to a lot of these showcases, what we're seeing now at these 18-year-old national events, you're seeing what was started 5 years ago. And that was the weighted ball, like the drive lines. And you're seeing a lot of like shorter arm actions, a lot more intent, and I think it's just the same thing with the launch angle. The launch angle stuff kind of started about 5 years ago, so you're seeing a lot of efforty pitchers with short arms. You're seeing a lot of like guys just trying to lift with the bat. It's a byproduct of what, these guys started doing when they were 13, 14, 15 years old. And now we're seeing them at 17, 18. I think that's a big part of it. Just the training regimens, these guys are on. There's so much specialization, especially in pitching, just from the weighted balls and so much just the data and the research that's being done, with pitch design. Like you have people that they're specialized in pitch design. It's stuff like you never heard of that position when I started 12 years ago. I mean, where pitching was then, where it is now, it's unbelievable. You used to have one pitching coordinator. Now you need, close to 3. It's, but I think a lot of that has just the growth and evolution of pitching research data and what's out there now is really why, you're seeing the spike in velo, because it's literally everywhere.
Yeah, and baseball is an evolution. It's always evolving, right? So you see the hitters trying to lift the ball and the pitchers now throwing up in the zone more, right? Trying to get those guys to chase those hard fastballs up in the zone.
That was it, right? Spin rate, elevate above the barrel, because these guys are trying to lift. We're trying to go up, but now we outlawed, the tack. So now you're seeing spin rates. So now does it shift? Do we go back? Because they were saying like sinker ball guys doesn't play because these guys are getting on plane with those. So we're going to pitch above the barrel. So now spin rates drop. Are we going to see the sinker baller guy come back? And now, it's
always evolving, man.
It really is. And like, I see more high school guys now than ever pitching 95, 96, 97. I mean, but, it always goes back to, ability to pitch. So you throw really hard. So, all right, if a high school kid's hitting 100, like what's he going to throw, 110? No, he's going to need to learn how to pull back, pitch at 95, sink the ball, ride the ball, so it's just like stuff's great, but then it's almost like you got to work backwards when you see these guys just so much, so soon. It's just that's kind of scouting. At one point you're projecting on velocity, and then in the next case you're like, all right, I need this guy needs to scale back and learn how to pitch, because you get up there, you throw 99 straight. I mean, they're going to hit it, because big league hitter, it's unbelievable what they can
they've
do.
been really good at hitting these fastballs. They've adjusted too, they're just constantly adjusting. All right, moving on. So what do you feel like the impact was from COVID on scouting?
It's a challenge. It was definitely, I would say, in the spring. The fall, we were still working our way back. Obviously, we didn't have a big league season, so we were kind of strapped, limited to what we could do. These colleges were still trying to figure everything out. I would say the spring was definitely a challenge. I got 5 states. Every state had different protocols. Not only did you know like weather, rotation, you need to know who was on the COVID list. You need to know the protocols going into, different ballparks, different conferences. The Big Ten was extremely strict. I mean, extremely. The state of Minnesota was unbelievably strict, but then you go down to Kentucky and it was kind of wide open, so you really just had to be aware. I think the one thing that came out of it that I really embrace and I like, we would always go around, travel and meet players, meet with their families, meet them in person. And obviously, just like everybody across any industry, the adoption of Zoom. And I think it's been great because it's allowed us to meet with more players. You can meet with them, outside of the standard times. You can record it. You can go back and reference it. I would say right now, it seems like things are getting closer to normal. I do think like the meetings over the Zoom versus in person are probably going to stick around. But that's really the only thing that I think is really going to change due to COVID. But like I said, the spring was tough. It was really tough, just trying to navigate everything. And because you're responsible for information, seeing players. You got the Big Ten that's only playing in conference or only playing on the weekend. You're limited looks. So you brought in the use of, trying to pull more information, that's watching video. We have there's a company called Synergy that does a great job cutting up video off live feeds and kind of filtering it in a way where we can search based on player in almost any conference now. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, you started utilizing a lot more sources than just going to games because we were kind of limited to what we could do.
Yeah, I think the major impact was on the colleges and the high school players, right? Because a lot of these seniors, they missed out in their senior year, and then in college, how many players were redshirted, right? And that it was just a funnel, right? They're just a roadblock of players, right? So I think that impact's going to be years down the road until that really irons itself out.
We're still feeling it right now because last year was crazy. I mean, just the amount of players that were back, that were pretty much done. All of a sudden they get this extra year. Then you got these grad guys bouncing around because they got the extra year, so they graduated. So now they can transfer. So, this fall has been a lot of trying to figure out like, all right, who's on what roster? Where did they come from? You're trying to figure out, what's the backstory to this guy? He just appeared at, a school in my area, came from out of area. Still feeling it this year. I think next year after might get closer to normal. But like you said, it's going to take a few years.
Okay. Yeah. And we touched on this a little bit about, coaches and the techniques of scouting and how it can help them. But how does it benefit a player to get evaluated? You think let's take it at a young age, right? Doing a pro scouting report on a 15, 16, 17-year-old. How do you feel like that benefits them?
I think getting proper instruction sooner than later is vital because there's more often than not, I see a player at 16, 17, 18. I'm just like, how'd you end up swinging like that? Or how did you end up throwing like that? How did you get to this point? And there's so many times in my lessons when I'm working with an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, that's maybe they're really good at that level. And I say to them, I'm going to break you down and build you back up. And you're going to hate me for a little bit, but I'm telling you, it's going to pay off in the years to come because you're going to be successful where you're at right now. but eventually the game is going to speed up and you are going to struggle with your current, whether it's the way you pitch or it's the way you swing, you're just not going to be able to catch up. So I want to get you in a better position sooner than later, because it's much harder to make adjustments when the game speeds up, because now they start to fail and they start going like, man, I can't, I'm struggling. And I think that's why it's good to get evaluated sooner, just to see, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? Am I moving right? I am. And it was a combination of just some of the stuff I was learning during the pandemic on top of when I was with Area Scouts and learning about the movement. I am such a believer in the movement, in moving the right way. I mean, that is by far one of the most important things, because when I get these young kids, they don't move right. And the biggest thing I try to teach them is like, just listen, if we can just get you to move properly and be more efficient, like you're going to have better success and outcomes right away. And that's why I just think it's so important for them to get looked at, be seen by some other eyes that can kind of break them down, tell them, all right, you're going to be all right now, but you're going to need to make some adjustments if you want to continue to be successful in this game and be able to keep up as you grow and as this game starts to speed up.
Yeah, I think it's all beneficial for them. So besides scouting, what are you involved in? Are you involved with any youth baseball or activities or coaching?
I don't coach my son, only because I obviously travel quite a bit throughout the spring, but I try to make every game in practice. I just try to be dad, just sit back, just take it all in, not try to scout and try to break down every 8-year-old on the ball field. I do lessons here locally, and it's good because not only, I get to, I see what's out there, but also being able to work with young kids. And like I just said, it's teaching them, trying to teach them the right way, to get them to move right. Try to get, I get some kids that come in that are, they got some ability, and you just try to maximize that and teach them how to move right. And, it's just really what I want to do is just, if a kid wants to get better, I'm going to do everything I can to get you better. But yeah, I do lessons pretty much from 7-year-olds straight up to 18. And it's, in the off season, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on, so it is nice just getting around the players. That's one thing in scouting when you're not involved with players like you are with coaching, so it kind of fills that void a little bit, just working with kids again.
Yeah. And talking about lessons and just athletes in general, I mean, it's so important for, parents to understand that lessons are just a tool, and they have to go home and utilize what you go over and what you change. And the work ethic needs to be there.
Yep. I can't stress that enough. I'm like, listen, you're with me 30 minutes a week. If you think I can turn you into something, you're crazy. You need to take everything that I'm teaching you, and every lesson I always try to review, like, tell me everything I told you, what we got to work on. Go home and work on it. I got a couple that do, and man, when they come back, it's like, because it expedites everything.
Yep. That's the best thing, isn't it?
It's not like we got to rehash what we did last week. They come back in and it's like, you got it, man. All right, time to build upon last week.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. When I see a kid come in and I know he's worked, I'm just so happy. It makes me want to work harder for him.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Last question. Where can people reach out for more information about you, Scout School 360, and the programs you offer?
I just, you can Twitter. It's my name and my number, Mike Medici 6, Mike at fullcirclebaseball.com. I'm an open book. I like I said, it all started on LinkedIn by people just asking me about scouting. Like, there's never anybody I don't respond to, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just trying to, pay it forward. And if I can help in any way, and I'm proud because there are some people that have reached out that have jobs in baseball now. And that's the most rewarding thing. It's just super cool. All of a sudden, like, cold email on LinkedIn to meeting them at a ballpark. And that's happening.
Great.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on and answering some questions for us. And love that you're part of this program. I love the Scout School 360. I think it's an absolute gem for anybody that's involved with baseball. So I think everyone should check it out. But thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
You got it.
And Mike, I have So I want to start off. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions for you.
Sure.
Before that, I just want to mention, I have to honestly say, I mean, Area Scouts was always coming. I've been working on it so long, but there's definitely over the last 2-3 years that I was working on it that I hesitated to do the final things that I had to do to finally get it out there. And there's no doubt that if I didn't meet Mike, I probably, again, it would have been out there eventually, but I don't know that I would have already put it out there. Mike kind of gave me that vote of confidence when I met him, almost 2 years ago now, probably at this point when we first started talking, to really, just finally, even though it was already finished, to finally say let's do it and get it out there and start helping all these kids. So I'll never forget that, Mike, for you giving me that vote of confidence. That was huge, and just getting this whole ball rolling. So eternally grateful for all of that you've done, and you're a huge part of where we are now. A lot of the people that have come on board have gone through your program and love it. Got nothing but great feedback, and looking forward to the next chapter here with you being on board. So
Yeah, no, it's been fun. I appreciate it. Yeah, it goes back about almost 2 years ago, November.
Yeah.
Same thing, cold email. Look where we are now.
Exactly. So I'm going to do these questions real quick. These are all for you, Mike. Hi, Mike Craig from Tennessee. My son is a 16-year-old pitcher throwing in the high 90s. With so many kids out there possessing velocity, is there one number one thing that really separates them from being a number one pick and others who just don't get selected at all? Has it gone down to looking more into the character of athletes now that they all possess some of the same skills?
Character seeds. To answer the first thing, yeah, velocity. Yes, obviously you go to any event, you're going to see a radar gun. It's not just about velocity. It's about second pitch, third pitch. Do they have them? What are they? How do they play in the game? It's the development of those, which are big separators. I see plenty of guys that throw really hard, but they don't have second pitches. And right away, you're just very limited to what you can do with them. So the development of the secondary and ability to pitch with it with consistency. And as far as character, I always go back, and I completely stole this from Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis Colts GM. Your ability, your talent is your ceiling, character is your floor. Okay. So if your ceiling's here, if your ceiling's like you're a top end draft pick and your character is garbage, there's this huge gap. Okay. Well, let's say the character is really good. All of a sudden this gap, it gets much higher. And when you have high ceiling and high character, now you got something special. So yes, we look very deep into the character side. So you give me somebody with a ton of upside and they got plus character, amazing work ethic, then the chances of them getting to that ceiling are much greater.
Jim from Nevada, played D1 college baseball at ASU, very baseball knowledgeable. What is the best way for me to get into scouting?
Scouting is it's a weird time right now. The one thing I always tell people, the best thing you can do is start as an associate, because an associate, unfortunately, you work for free, but you work for the area scout in the area of which you live. So I always recommend going on LinkedIn, look for area scouts that cover the area that you reside in. And what that'll do is kind of help you build your network a little bit, because they don't really post a whole lot of openings, so you don't know about them. I'm most of the time I know about openings long before anything's ever posted, so knowing somebody on the inside, building that network will let you know of, some of the openings that organizations may have. But right now it's a weird time. Obviously during the pandemic, they shrunk the minor leagues. We lost 2 affiliates. We only have 4 plus the rookie ball now. The draft went from 40 rounds down to 20. So it'll be interesting over these next couple of years, what teams decide to do, as far as, do we need as many scouts? Do we have bigger areas? How are they going to kind of set up these departments, and some of that I just don't know yet. I do think over the next couple of years we'll have a better idea as we settle into this new kind of format that we're doing.
Miss Benny from Kansas City, do you have a hand in the draft? And I've always wondered what the percentage of number 1 picks you would say are successful once drafted.
Well, yeah, I'm on the amateur side, so I cover 5 states in the Midwest. So yes, I'm involved in the amateur side, or in the draft. If you really start looking back, if you just Google, like I'm going Baseball Reference, look at previous drafts, you'll scratch your head a lot, especially when you go through the first round, because you're going to see some guys that that went maybe in the 20s or later, that are impactful type players. And you're going to look at some top picks and you're like, who is this guy? I've never heard of this guy before. It goes back to like the 84 draft when, the Bulls took Jordan at 3. I don't even know who went 1 and 2, but what's it matter? I mean, the greatest player ever went 3. We see it in baseball all the time, and it always goes back to, what is the ceiling? Are guys just too good too soon? Did they hit their peak too soon? And they kind of fizzle out in the minor leagues. But I can tell you more often than not, when guys fizzle out, I don't want to say it's always a makeup thing, but there's, it can be injuries, it can be other things, but, that's why I think it's just so important to always hit on makeup.
As a dad of a very talented 15-year-old, we have attended events that have had Major League Baseball scouts there. I've always wanted to introduce myself and my son to them, but always feel that I am stepping over a line. Is that something that is frowned upon when you are at the games yourself?
I would say it's just timing. If it's the middle of the game, I can tell you certain guys are more approachable than others. Some of them are more open than others. Obviously we always get approached at games. People just maybe have questions, just want to ask, our opinions on players, or, just ask, generalized questions. I would just say more timing, whether it's between innings, try to pull them aside, or you catch them as they're, whether on their way out or before a game or just after a game. I don't think it's bad to ask. But like I said, just kind of pick the right time, not during the game.
All right, we're going to do one more. Let's see. I feel like I always read about teams in sports cutting their scouting departments. Where do you see the future of scouting going at this point?
Yeah, it's I honestly, I don't know. I think it's going to be team by team. We've had instances where teams decided to really pull back on scouts. Just the sense and the feel I get from talking to some of the scouts on those teams, they're going to struggle, I think, with less. I think they're going to realize that it is much harder to do with less people in the field. I always go back. It's a people game. We're drafting people. We're not just drafting, just talented players. Like, they're individuals. They have personalities. Like, we need to know them inside and out. If you skip out on the makeup side, you're going to get beat. It happens all the time. You have to know the people. And the only way to know the people is have people on the ground. I mean, so, like I said, it'll be very interesting with these next few years to see how teams decide to go about this. Like you said, we got 20 less rounds, and we got a hard cap of 180 in the minor leagues with two less affiliates. So we're not going to need as many players. It's just, how are they going to kind of divvy up the country? How are they going to set up their department? That remains to be seen. But, as of right now, I know it gets put out there a lot that teams are getting rid of scouts, but some of the teams that have gotten rid of scouts and went with smaller departments are actually hiring. So I think that is a positive trend.
So it's all circling back, basically.
Oops, right?
All right, well, thank you, Mike. You're more than welcome to hang around, or you can take off. We're going to go through the platform. Brian's going to share his screen and go through kind of the whole process of an athlete coming on board. Again, I appreciate you taking the time tonight and everything you've done for us this far and moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me on. Good seeing y'all.
Thank you, too.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Lance. So on the nights we have interviews, we go through this a little bit quicker than we usually do. But if you want any further information after this presentation, you can always go to areascouts.com. Or if you're a parent looking for an athlete to get involved with us, you can go to app.areascouts.com and sign up for a free profile. Like Mike Medici, who you'll see here, we have many really impressive directors throughout our team. And again, you can look at areascouts.com and go to the directors page and look at all those. 3 of them were Olympians this past year, which is fantastic for them to be representing Area Scouts and playing for their countries. Base. So Anthony is going to go over base after my portion of the presentation, but I will just say that base is like Mike was talking about before. It's looking at those biomechanics, how an individual moves, and making sure they're a good athlete, as well as a good baseball player or softball player or football player. So Anthony will go over that after my presentation here. So we do base to start with all of our athletes, and then we also do a sports-specific evaluation. We call it the on-field assessment. And in that on-field assessment, we're going to look at every aspect of the game that the athlete plays. So catching, fielding, pitching, hitting. We're going to break down for fundamentals. We're going to look for what they can improve on, how they can move better, footwork, mechanics as a pitcher, mechanics as a hitter, all the different things you need to do to be better at your game. So we're going to do that. We're going to take video, we're going to break it down, and then we're going to do some development material as well that I'll go over in a little bit. We also get a complete set of metrics, as we were talking about with Mike. Advanced metrics is really a big portion of the game now. It's something that people key off of, scouts, colleges. So we want to show the athletes where they're at for exit velocity, for their velocity, spin rate, pitching, glove to glove times. We take glove to glove times because it's a good indication of how the athlete can get the ball in the field and get it to a destination on target in a short period of time with the top velocity they can throw at in that situation. Pop times for catchers as well. Make this affordable for every family. So if you want to do base only, it's only $117, and that includes 2 months of the base development. And again, Anthony will go over that as well. And then after those 2 months, it's just $10 per month to continue with the base development. So affordable for every family. Area Scouts has many different partners that we work with. We work with New England AAU Baseball. There's some of the devices that we also use in our training videos and have partnerships with PowerFlex Performance Cord, Axios Centripetal Trainer, Queen Fuego. And then we have some partnerships with the Scout Hub that does evaluations of players and looks at recruiting. Diamond Kinetics is one of our sponsors with regards to the metrics. And then we have Sports Thread as well. Sports Thread I'll go over in a little bit. Here is the platform, the Area Scouts platform. You can get this by going app.areascouts.com. And again, you can do a sign up for a free profile, and then an evaluator will reach out to you and contact you about getting an assessment. So once you get into the profile, there's going to be a lot of information in here. You can put in, your personal information, your positions you play, a lot about you. And then you also have the opportunity to sign up as a base athlete, premium athlete, which includes base and the sport specific. And we also have some assessments out there for free for our athletes as well, nutrition and an athletic mindset assessment that you can take and get some feedback from our directors on what you should be thinking about for nutrition and mindset and developing more just off the field. And as a person, as a player out there, mentally being tough and being, physically fit and healthy. So you can also request training, request evaluations, requesting training. So your evaluator should be a one-stop shop to get any type of lessons you want to get, hitting, pitching, fielding, catching. If your evaluator is not comfortable doing specific types of lessons, they will point you in the right direction of a coach that they do know and do trust for that aspect of the game. For me, myself, I do a tremendous amount of pitching lessons. For hitting, fielding, I have other coaches, other people in area scouts that I trust to do that for the players that request it. So once we go into the premium section here, you're going to see that we have stats. You can put in your stats for, all the games you play up as many years as you want to go back. So you can have a very good portfolio here of how you've done over the years, recording, what your average was, your hits, pitching, how many wins you had. And you can put this in, just grab it from Game Changer or whatever other type of, scoring system you may use. And this is a great way to keep track of all of your stats in one location. Metrics. So this is an example of the metrics page that we have. In this case, it was a Rapsodo. And we do use a bunch of different types of equipment. It really depends upon the evaluator and what they have access to. Our standard is Diamond Kinetics, but we do also have Rapsodo, Blast, HitTrax, and TrackMan on here as options for our evaluators to enter data from. In this case, this was a hitter with an exit velocity of 96, spin off the bat, 1890, launch angle, max distance. So it's going to give you all that information, and then you can track that and see how you improve through the Area Scouts program going forward. So when we do the base and the on-field assessment, we're going to have benchmarks. We're going to put you up against benchmarks we feel like you should hit in each of these assessments. For instance, in this base assessment here, the athlete scored a 2 out of 3 on the standing toe touch, 3 being the highest score, and the athlete received a 2. So they are going to get 2 corrective videos, 1 for mobility and 1 for motor control. This is going to hopefully help them to get to a 2 to a 3. I personally have actually seen athletes go from a 1 to a 3 using Anthony's very, very impactful exercises and stretches that he has in these videos. So the proof is in the pudding. It really does work. The athlete puts the effort in and does these. You're going to see that drastic improvement in these biomechanics. Also have different types of development for athleticism, sequence, and endurance as well. When you look at the on-field benchmarks, you're going to have them in pitching, catching, hitting, and fielding. This particular one is going to look at the leg lift. Here are your objectives for the leg lift as a pitcher. And here are the 2 flags that were received in this assessment, one for being a toe dominant lift and one for the knee tracking first to third base. In this case, we're going to have corrective videos, and it's going to be our director of pitching, Josh Zide, going through a drill to help you not be so toe dominant and not have your knee track to first or third base. Okay, lastly, SportsThread is a national sports social media company that athletes that are Area Scouts athletes can have profiles on and send all their information out to colleges. They can put their videos on here, their academics, their stats, and it's just a really good portfolio for you to be able to send out to college coaches and, open up that conversation with them. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony. I'll stop sharing, Lance.
All right, thank you, Brian. So I'll try to go quickly so we can maybe have time for a couple questions at the end. But my name's Anthony Anzillo. I'm a physical therapist and strength and conditioning specialist. I created the base assessment, and it really lines up nicely with, everything you heard from Mike in that interview. That for an athlete to be successful, they need to show that they can perform well on the field. That's what the scouts are looking for, what coaches are looking for. And a big part of that is that the athlete has good movement skills. And in order to have really good movement skills, requires that they have good flexibility, good joint mobility, good motor control to be able to control all of the various pieces of the body. And there's a lot that goes into it. And if an athlete lacks, ankle mobility or mobility in their hips, then that's going to really affect how well that they're able to move in whichever position they play. And that's going to cause compensations. It's going to cause their performance to be worse on the field. Those compensations are going to be evident in the way that they move. And it's also going to elevate their risk of injury from those compensations and putting excessive stress on other areas of their body, the vulnerable areas, such as an elbow for a pitcher, for example. So all this stuff ties together really nicely. The base assessment itself, it's broken into 4 different sections. There's biomechanics, athleticism, sequence, and endurance. For biomechanics, we're looking, you saw one of the examples with a standing toe touch. So there are 7 different very fundamental basic movement patterns we're looking at that we can really get a lot of information from. So that standing toe touch, that gives us a peek into the athlete's hip mobility, their hamstring flexibility, the flexion mobility in each, in their spine, in each joint of the spine, as well as the motor control that they have available to put all those pieces together. So if they score poorly, that tells us that somewhere in that chain, there is a deficiency that they'll be provided with a corrective exercise for. So that's that way for that, as well as the 7 other movements we're looking at within biomechanics. For the athleticism section, we have various tests of both upper and lower body strength and power, where we have the ability to compare side-to-side performance and look for any left-right asymmetries, because that's also a risk factor for injuries, asymmetry within the body of either mobility or strength. We'll also have several tests of speed and agility that we look at within that section too, and data to be able to compare how well the athlete does compared to others in their age group and in the sport that they play. When we get into the sequence section, we're looking at the kinematic sequence, and that's basically how efficiently the athlete's able to transfer power from their legs through their core to their arms, and then deliver that power through their arm with throwing a ball or swinging a bat or swinging a golf club. Any of those complex movements that are primarily most evident in those rotational movements. That's how most of the power is derived. In that order, it's generated in the legs, transferred through the core, and delivered by the upper body somehow. So we have a few tests to look at that and give us an idea of their efficiency of their kinematic sequence. And then lastly, we move into the endurance section. And endurance is really important because fatigue is a major risk factor for injury, but also for poor performance. So the more resilient an athlete is to fatigue, the lower the risk of injury will be, and the better their performance will be, particularly when it comes to the end of a game or end of a season, or when they would otherwise start breaking down. So we look at both cardiorespiratory endurance as well as endurance of muscle endurance, primarily core muscle endurance in that section. And again, provide corrective exercises that are targeted to improve all of those things for any deficits that we find. I think I did that pretty quickly.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, both of you were efficient on that. All right, we'll do, so we got 9.
Maybe I should redo the 8-minute video, Brian.
We got it down to 7.5, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do, what do we got? 9, 1, 2, 3. We could do about 5 of these. All right, went to the website, did not find any events being held in my state. I am in Arizona. Am I able to just request any time I want to have my son do one of your evaluations? So Brian, you could maybe answer that on. So there's 2 different sites if you want to go through that, Brian, because that some people get confused. They go to the app site where the software is, and as opposed to the other website.
Yeah, you can go to www.areascouts.com and click on Get Evaluated. You can do that as well. There's also events on there that you could look for events in your area to sign up your son or daughter to do an event. And then when you do sign up for a profile, app.areascouts.com or through the Get Evaluated tab there, you will be assigned an evaluator that will reach out to you and then work with you on what time you want to do an assessment and work around, your schedule and find a time that works for everyone. A lot of our evaluators, have to make sure they can get a field or a facility to be able to get the evaluation done. So it's important just to have those lines of communication open with them.
Okay, would you say your program is more aligned with beginner athletes or advanced? And what do you feel your program offers both of this type of athletes? What would a parent like myself expect to gain through your movement assessment by signing up my 9-year-old son and 13-year-old daughter? So Anthony, you could kind of go through that, the benefits of both of those. Those are actually our two age groups too.
Sure. So as far as the base assessment goes, that's, I'd say, equal value for any age group. Really, it's a matter of how early you want to tackle different issues that may be present in each athlete. Younger athletes kind of have the benefit, most of them, of not being stiff, I'd say. So most of their movement pattern issues are more of like learning to move and getting good motor control patterns and working on their strength and their stability to be able to control the mobility that they do have. Whereas, some of the other older athletes, some stiffness may end up setting in, especially if they've had, an injury along the way throughout their athletic career that maybe wasn't rehabilitated fully. So you might see some different findings, but regardless of the age of the athlete, I think there's a ton of benefit for all of them on the base side of things. How about the sport development side, Brian, the sport specific?
Yeah, it's all about fundamentals. Like, and you say advanced, I have athletes that are with me that are 16, 17 years old, which I would consider, advanced from a baseball standpoint. And, there's still a tremendous amount of fundamentals, movements that are on the field, techniques that can be learned. So I think it's both beneficial to both age groups. The earlier you start, honestly, the better, because if you're learning these fundamentals and getting them as a core value in the way you perform, it's just going to help you in the long term. Like Mike was saying in the interview, when you look at some of these young athletes that need to, they're going to get into trouble if they don't adjust when they get older. Those are the adjustments that we start to make at a young age so that they're already, excelling as they go up through the ranks.
And I think, on that same note, I understand Mike is, dealing with, prospects, athletes that have a chance to play professionally. But that doesn't mean that, it is not devastating for an athlete that isn't at that level to go through an injury, not only just the pain of that injury, obviously, when they're just playing, could even be town ball or a travel team, but they lose that season. And especially, I can tell you how much it affects kids, especially here up in the Northeast. I mean, we only get our spring, summer, and fall. We don't get to have seasons all year round like some of these other states. So when these kids get hurt, they lose a year. I mean, it's not just a couple games. They go through the pain of the injury, being insecure when they come back from that injury, and they lose that entire season. They, let's face it, these kids grow up pretty quick. It's a pretty short window that they have to play. So when you lose a season or 2 seasons due to injuries that could have been prevented just by simple instruction on how to move properly through an evaluation, it really, that's where the value is in my eyes, is keeping those kids on the field. And I don't care what level they're playing at. That's where they want to be with their friends out there playing or competing at the higher level. So it really does. I can't stress that enough, and that's a lot of the reason why we have this platform.
Yeah, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Much easier to be proactive than reactive when it comes to this kind of thing.
How much experience do your evaluators need to have in the sport that they are doing assessments on? I would love to do something like this, even if it was part-time. Are you currently accepting applications? So this kind of goes, I can touch on this a little bit. I know that sports specific, the evaluators that are doing the sports specific evaluations are, typically people have to have a couple years experience, whether they're playing at the collegiate level or having worked with kids for at least several years, that we know that they have that experience in coaching. On the base side, as far as doing movement assessments, maybe Anthony, you could touch on kind of what you feel is like a necessity for somebody coming in that maybe would want to do, base assessments and learn the movement assessment side.
Yeah, so it helps if they have some background in working with athletes at the very least, and kind of assessing movement in some way, and coaching proper movement. Those are minimum things. People who are personal trainers have any kind of experience in healthcare, working with athletes, have a huge advantage. But we're going to train you pretty well. It just helps when people have that foundation to make it a lot easier and speed up that learning curve. There is a big learning curve with it, so just a matter of where someone is on their journey of understanding these things to see how quickly they catch up.
We're going to do one more here. How often do your evaluators meet with their athletes, and are your evaluations mostly done on the weekends? So, Brian, you can answer that one.
Really, from a frequency standpoint, it really depends on, the parent, athlete, and evaluator. Some athletes want to get reevaluated every few months. I try to keep contact with my athletes on a monthly basis, at least asking them how everything's going with the development, if they need any help, just keeping lines of communication open, and then, asking when the reassessment they'd want to have that taking place. So I think it really is about your relationship with the evaluator and what you're looking at to get out of this. Do you want it to be every 2 months? Do you want it to be every 6 months? It's really up to you. I would suggest not going past 3 months, 3 to 4 months, so you can get a really good assessment at least 3 times a year to look at your progress. And also, we're dealing with athletes that are in the age ranges where their bodies are going through a lot of changes too. So things can change in a very short period of time. Somebody has a growth spurt or, has, some growing that they've done. There's going to be some changes to the way their body moves. So we want to also keep an eye on that and make sure that they're keeping on track. As far as the weekends go, it really depends on your evaluator availability and fields and facilities, but the evaluators will, try to work with you and be available whenever you are.
All right, well, thank you, guys. Another good Wednesday call. Appreciate you both being on. And thank you again, Mike Medici, for being on tonight. If anyone wants any more information, go to the website, www.areascouts.com. You can sign up for a free profile for your son or daughter through that link. And there's no obligation. You go in, kind of see what the site's all about. And thank you again for everyone listening to the live tonight.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You too.